Hey there, language enthusiasts. This is Candace, and you're listening to Get English Podcast, where we make learning English fun, practical, and totally achievable. I'm super excited about today's episode because we're diving into something that can really transform your English: advanced vocabulary for everyday situations. You know that feeling when you know exactly what you want to say, but can't find the perfect words? Well, that's exactly what we're addressing today. We'll explore how to level up your vocabulary game in a way that feels natural and not forced. We're not just learning fancy words, we're learning how to use them in real-life situations that you encounter every day. Throughout this episode, we'll look at practical examples, share some really useful tips, and I'll even have a special conversation segment to show you how these words work in actual dialogue. Trust me, by the end of this episode, you'll have some amazing new tools to express yourself more precisely and confidently in English. When we talk about advancing your English skills, expanding your vocabulary is absolutely crucial. Think of vocabulary as the colors on an artist's palette. The more colors you have, the more nuanced and beautiful your creation can be. The same goes for your communication in English. Let me give you a real-world example. Imagine you're in a job interview, and instead of just saying, "I helped my team," you can say, "I facilitated team collaboration," or "I orchestrated successful team projects." These advanced word choices don't just sound better, they actually convey more precise meaning and showcase your professional capabilities. But it's not just about professional settings. Even in casual conversations, having a rich vocabulary can make a world of difference. Instead of saying something is very good, you might say it's exceptional or outstanding. Instead of saying you're very happy, you could say you're delighted or thrilled. These alternatives add layers of meaning and emotion to your communication. Here's what's really interesting. Research shows that people who have a broader vocabulary are often perceived as more credible and competent. It's not about showing off. It's about having the right tools to express yourself accurately. Think of it like having a well-equipped toolbox. You might not need every tool every day, but when you need a specific one, you'll be glad it's there. And here's something many English learners don't realize. Native speakers continuously expand their vocabulary too. It's a natural part of language growth, and it's what helps us articulate our thoughts and feelings with greater precision. The key is learning how to use these words naturally and appropriately, which is exactly what we'll be exploring today. Now, let's dive into some common situations where you can naturally incorporate more advanced vocabulary. I'll walk you through 3 key areas where elevating your word choice can make a significant impact. Let's start with the workplace. In professional settings, instead of saying, "I looked at the numbers," you might say, "I analyzed the data," or "I evaluated the metrics." During meetings, rather than saying, "I think," try using phrases like "I propose" or "I recommend." These alternatives sound more authoritative and professional. In social settings, you have wonderful opportunities to use more sophisticated vocabulary while still sounding natural. Instead of saying, "The restaurant was very nice," you could say, "The ambiance was delightful," or "The dining experience was impeccable." When describing your weekend, rather than saying, "It was fun," try, "It was invigorating," or "It was thoroughly enjoyable." Academic discussions present another perfect opportunity for advanced vocabulary. Whether you're in a classroom or discussing current events with friends, you can enhance your expression. Instead of saying, "This book changed how I think," you might say, "This book transformed my perspective," or "It fundamentally altered my viewpoint." Here's a practical tip. Start with one situation at a time. Maybe focus on work-related vocabulary first. Once those words feel natural, move on to social situations. It's like building a house. You start with the foundation and add one room at a time. Remember, the goal isn't to completely change how you speak, but rather to gradually incorporate these more precise and sophisticated words where they naturally fit. Think of it as adding new ingredients to your cooking. You want to enhance the flavor, not overwhelm it. To help illustrate how we can use advanced vocabulary naturally, I've invited my friend Sarah, a language coach, to join us today. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Candace. I'm delighted to be here to share my insights on this fascinating topic.
Let's demonstrate for our listeners how we can elevate everyday conversations. Sarah, I heard you recently renovated your home office. Could you tell us about that experience?
Of course, the transformation was quite substantial. Rather than simply rearranging furniture, I opted for a comprehensive redesign that would optimize both functionality and aesthetic appeal.
I love how you used comprehensive instead of complete and optimize rather than improve. Could you elaborate on the specific changes you implemented?
Certainly, I incorporated ergonomic furniture to enhance productivity and selected a color scheme that facilitates concentration. The previous setup was adequate, but this new configuration has revolutionized my work environment.
That's a perfect example of naturally using more sophisticated vocabulary. Notice how Sarah didn't just say changed, but used revolutionized to emphasize the impact.
Exactly. And what's crucial is that these words aren't just fancy alternatives. They're more precise in conveying the exact meaning. When I say ergonomic, it specifically relates to design efficiency for human use, which is more accurate than simply saying comfortable.
That's such a valuable point. Let's give another example. Instead of describing our podcast as good for learning, we could say it's instrumental in facilitating language acquisition.
Yes. And when listeners integrate these terms into their vocabulary, they're not just memorizing words, they're expanding their capacity for nuanced expression.
I notice you've naturally demonstrated another sophisticated word there, integrate, instead of add or use. How do you suggest listeners begin incorporating these terms into their daily conversations?
I recommend an incremental approach. Start by identifying one or two advanced terms that resonate with you and deliberately incorporate them into your regular interactions. Gradually, this conscious effort evolves into natural usage.
What a wonderful demonstration of how we can elevate our language while maintaining a natural flow of conversation. Thank you, Sarah, for this illuminating discussion. Now that we've seen these words in action, let me share some practical tips on how you can effectively incorporate advanced vocabulary into your daily conversations. First, let's talk about memory techniques. One of the most effective strategies is the context association method. Instead of memorizing words in isolation, connect them to specific situations you encounter regularly. For example, if you're learning the word articulate, practice using it when discussing communication at work. Another powerful technique is what I call the synonym ladder. Start with a basic word you already know well, like good, and gradually climb up to more sophisticated alternatives like exceptional, outstanding, or exemplary. This creates a natural progression in your vocabulary development. When it comes to practice strategies, I highly recommend the word of the day approach. Select one advanced word and challenge yourself to use it at least 3 times throughout your day. This repetition helps cement the word in your active vocabulary. Here's a crucial tip. Always keep a digital note on your phone with new words you encounter. When you hear or read an advanced word that resonates with you, jot it down along with a real-life example of how to use it. This creates a personalized vocabulary repository that's relevant to your life. Another effective strategy is what I call conversation mapping. Before important meetings or social events, identify 2 or 3 advanced words that might be relevant to the topic at hand. This preparedness gives you confidence and creates natural opportunities to utilize your expanding vocabulary. Remember, the goal isn't to completely transform your speech overnight. Instead, aim for gradual integration of more sophisticated vocabulary while maintaining your authentic voice. Think of it as adding new colors to your communication palette, rather than painting an entirely new picture. Now, let's tackle a crucial topic that many English learners struggle with: common mistakes when using advanced vocabulary. I want to help you avoid these pitfalls so you can use sophisticated words naturally and effectively. The first and most common mistake is what I call thesaurus overload. This happens when people try to replace every simple word with a complex one. Remember, using advanced vocabulary isn't about showing off. It's about expressing yourself more precisely when needed. For example, instead of saying the food was good, you might say the meal was exceptional. But you wouldn't say the nutritional sustenance was gastronomically magnificent. That's overdoing it, and it sounds unnatural. Another frequent error is using advanced words in the wrong context. For instance, pertinent means relevant or appropriate, but I've heard students use it incorrectly in casual situations, like, that movie was very pertinent, when they meant entertaining or enjoyable. Context appropriateness is key. You wouldn't use highly formal language when chatting with friends at a coffee shop. Save words like furthermore and moreover for academic or professional settings. In casual conversations, simpler transition words like also or besides often work better. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the importance of context-appropriate word choices to practical strategies for incorporating advanced vocabulary naturally into your daily conversations. Remember, the goal isn't to sound like you've memorized a dictionary, but to have the right words at your disposal when you need them. Here's your action plan for this week. Choose 3 new advanced words that you'd like to incorporate into your English usage. Practice using them in different contexts, and make sure you're comfortable with both their meaning and pronunciation. Write them down, use them in conversations, and make them part of your active vocabulary. Thank you for joining me today on Get English Podcast. Don't forget to practice what you've learned, and remember, every new word you master is another tool in your communication toolkit. Be sure to join the Telegram group in the description. Until next time, this is Candace saying goodbye and happy learning.